Welcome to the RMR Literary Examination warm-up material. Following is 1 minute of practice dictation at 200 words per minute. This is the same voice you will hear on the actual test. Ready? Begin. Thank you all for coming here this evening to learn a little bit about today's topic of discussion, and that is home improvement. Whether your intended project is large or small, we hope to share some helpful tips that will guide you in making decisions. Our discussion is geared more toward homeowners who are thinking about an addition to their home, or perhaps just a new bathroom or new kitchen. We are planning to have future seminars for those of you who have smaller scale projects, such as installing a tile floor, replacing a door, or just painting a room. We will be making an announcement soon when those sessions will be held. You no doubt have an idea of what you want to accomplish as far as your project is concerned. But before making any final decisions, it might be wise to consult with an architect if you're planning on building an addition to your home. The architect can steer you through any zoning rules or building code issues that you may not be aware of. Someone who is more familiar with space planning can make suggestions that will not only improve your plans, but also wind up saving you money in the long run. This is the end of the practice dictation. At this time, the chief examiner will press pause to ensure that all candidates can clearly hear the dictation. We are now ready to begin the RMR Literary Skills Test, which is 5 minutes of dictation at 200 words per minute. Ready? Begin. When I accepted the invitation to speak to you at your awards ceremony, I sat down to make a list of what should be included in my presentation. Most important is it should be short and to the point. I will attempt to satisfy that goal. We just enjoyed a fine meal, and everyone will soon be drowsy and yawning and not paying any attention to what I have to offer. That is a good reason for keeping it brief. The second thing a short speech should contain is a funny story. Fortunately for all of you lucky listeners, I don't remember any clever stories, so I won't attempt to be somebody I am not. The third item in a good speech is a humble approach. I may relate an event or two from my lifetime of experience, but I am not here to brag about what I have accomplished or achieved. I am here primarily to encourage you to seek your highest goals and do it with energy and commitment and passion. Then last but not least is a big ending. That is a lot of material to pack into our short time together, so let's get started. All of you are here because of your outstanding efforts and the many good things you have done during the school year just completed. Congratulations to each one of you. Continue the good work. The world will be a better place because of people like you. Be thankful for your successes and find ways to share them generously with others. It will lift their spirits and help them achieve better things themselves. I checked recently and discovered that I had 24 hours to spend every day. Not only me, but everyone else does too. I was amazed. Only 24 hours and so many things to do. I can remember as a young child complaining to my mother about having nothing to do. We did not own a television, so that was not an option. My mother was patient with me, however, and I soon discovered that whining to her was not the answer. Since I was an only child, I had to develop my imagination. As adults, we tend to forget how. I encourage you to work on your imagination, or if you have lost yours, go find it. It will make your life more interesting and exciting, and others will want to hang around with you. The number one answer on my top 10 list of things that lead to a successful and happy life is attitude. This is so important that nothing else comes close. A poor attitude will bring you difficulty and disappointment your whole life. The first step is to realize that only you are in charge of your attitude. It is your responsibility not to let anyone else be in control of it. If that somehow starts happening, do whatever it takes to be in charge of your own attitude. It's the healthy choice. Don't misunderstand me. We often mix up a good attitude with being cheerful all the time or putting on a happy face. Having a healthy attitude does not mean you should leave your common sense behind. In my job, I deal with our court system. Judges often tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury not to forget their common sense when they go to deliberate over a verdict. The same holds true for your attitude. Try to find a balance and keep a positive attitude that is based in reality. It's like the ads you see on TV about some exciting new medication that will cure whatever is the current disease of the month. It sounds great, the people look great, And then the speaker at the end of the commercial begins talking like a racehorse heading for the finish line. You know it cannot be good news. Your attitude is like that. Be positive. Try to find the good in all situations, but include a good dose of common sense. Once you are in control of your attitude, don't just ignore it. It needs periodic maintenance, just like your car. As a matter of fact, if people were as concerned with their attitudes as they are with their vehicles, our world would be a much better place. Think of your attitude as the zone. Every morning, try to get in the zone as soon as possible. Sometimes people around you make it difficult and it seems impossible, but remember, you are in control of your own attitude. Other people are not. Now that we are in charge of our attitudes, let's talk about setting goals. This can bring meaning and purpose to your daily activities and at the same time give you a lot of satisfaction. You should have long-term goals and short-term goals. If you have difficulty setting a goal, begin with something fairly easy like a goal for today. Keep it simple, especially if you are a beginner at setting and meeting goals. As you achieve success at it, broaden your outlook and make bigger goals that go further in the future. Realistic long-term goals can guide you in making near-term decisions along the way. Detours can happen, but keep in mind future goals and continue forward. Another tool to carry in your toolbox is a sense of humor. Try not to take yourself too seriously. It seems as a culture we have lost our ability to laugh at ourselves. Maybe it's the 24-hour news cycle. People smile at the camera, but what they have to say is always so serious. Those who hold public office are not allowed a moment of humor. Maybe it is not such a bad idea for the IRS employees to have a little fun. If you are the object of a humorous incident, be glad it's not somebody else who may be hurting. After all, you have a winning attitude now.
Welcome to the RMR Jury Charge Examination warm-up material. Following is 1 minute of practice dictation at 240 words per minute. Ready? Begin. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, now that you have heard all of the evidence that's been received and closing arguments of counsel in this case, it is my responsibility to instruct you on the law. As I explained to you at the beginning of the trial, this is a criminal case in which the state has charged the defendant with the crime of robbery. The defendant is charged with committing this crime when he took the pickup truck described in the evidence from the person of Mark Brown. The fact that the state has brought any charges is not evidence of anything. The charge is simply an accusation and nothing more. The defendant has pleaded not guilty. He is presumed to be innocent. Therefore, you must find the defendant not guilty unless and until you decide from the evidence that the state has proven him guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. It is my duty to instruct you what the law is. It is your duty to determine what the facts are and to apply the law to those facts. The statutes of this state say the crime of robbery occurs when a person by force and with violence or by putting in fear takes from the person of another an amount of money or property of any value whatever. In this case, the phrase by force and with violence means using any force that is enough to obtain property from an unwilling person. You are not required to reach a value of such property in this case. This is the end of the practice dictation. At this time, the chief examiner will press pause to ensure that all candidates can clearly hear the dictation. We are now ready to begin the RMR Jury Charge Skills Test, which is 5 minutes of dictation at 240 words per minute. Ready? Begin. Members of the jury, I will now give you some instructions about this case and your job as jurors. This is a criminal case brought against the defendant by the United States. The defendant is charged with one count which is set forth in a document called an indictment, which I will summarize for you. Count 1 charges the defendant, David Wayne Smith, did knowingly receive and possess a firearm that was not registered to him in the National Firearms Database. You should know that an indictment is just the document used to present the charge and is not proof of anything. Mr. Smith has pleaded not guilty to the crime charged in this case and is presumed to be innocent unless and until you find the evidence proves him guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. It will be your duty to find from the evidence whether the defendant, David Wayne Smith, is guilty or not guilty of the crime charged. You will decide what the facts are from the evidence that comes in during the trial. You will then apply those facts to the law that I provide you in these and any other instructions and thereby reach a unanimous verdict. As jurors in this criminal case, you are the sole judges of the facts, but you are required to follow the law as you are instructed regardless of whether you agree with it. As I read the instructions on the law, you may discover you thought the law was different or believe it should be different. In that case, you must put aside personal beliefs and follow the law as you are instructed. You have taken an oath to do so. As you listen to the evidence, do not allow sympathy or prejudice to influence you. The law demands of you a just verdict based only on the evidence, your common sense, and the law as I give it to you. The defendant, David Wayne Smith, is presumed innocent and therefore not guilty. This presumption of innocence alone is enough to find him not guilty of the crime with which he is charged. This presumption of innocence can be overcome only if you find the government proves him guilty beyond a reasonable doubt on each element of the crime with which he has been charged. The defendant in a criminal case never has to prove that he is innocent. The burden of proof is on the government to prove the case to you beyond a reasonable doubt. You should also remember that the defendant is now on trial only for the crime charged and not for anything else. Reasonable doubt is a doubt that is based on reason and common sense. It is not a doubt that is based on speculation. It may come from a careful consideration of all the evidence or from a lack of evidence. Proof beyond a reasonable doubt is proof of such a convincing character that a person would not hesitate to act on it in the most important decisions in life. It is a proof that leaves you firmly convinced of the guilt of the defendant. At the same time, proof beyond a reasonable doubt does not mean proof beyond all possible doubt. I have used the word evidence. In a trial, there are different types of evidence, such as the testimony you hear from the witnesses, documents, and other things received as exhibits, and any facts that the parties have agreed to be true. There are also things in a trial which are not evidence, such as statements made by the lawyers, testimony I tell you to disregard, or anything you hear about this case outside the courtroom. There may be times during the trial when a certain piece of evidence is received for a limited purpose, which means it can be used by you only for a particular reason. If that happens, I will tell you that at the time and instruct you on how that piece of evidence may be used. Some of you may have heard the terms direct evidence and circumstantial evidence. You do not need to be concerned with those terms. There is no difference in the law as far as the weight given to either direct or circumstantial evidence. As jurors, you will determine what weight and value to give all evidence. If the parties in this case introduce exhibits for you to consider as evidence, it will be for you to decide whether and how to rely on any such exhibit. The fact it has been presented to you for your inspection does not mean you must rely on it more than you rely on the testimony of witnesses. In deciding what the facts are in this case, you will have to decide what testimony you believe. You may believe all of the testimony of a witness, only part of it, or none of it. To help you make that decision, you should look at each witness and think about any motives they may have to testify in a certain way. You should consider the opportunity that witness had to have seen or heard things they are testifying about, and whether it is consistent with what they may have said at an earlier time. It can sometimes happen that a witness makes a statement at trial that is different from what they said at an earlier time. If you find that happens in this case, it will be for you to decide if that difference in testimony is because of an innocent misrecollection or mistake, or for some other reason. At the end of the trial, you will make your decision based on what you recall of the evidence. You will not have a written transcript to consult, and it will not be practical for the court reporter to read back lengthy portions of the testimony. Therefore, you must pay close attention to the evidence as it is presented to you. If you wish, however, you may take notes to help you remember what the witnesses tell you. If you do take notes, please keep them to yourself until you and your fellow jurors go into the jury room to deliberate on your verdict. Do not let the fact that you are taking notes distract you so that you do not hear all of the testimony that is provided by a witness. In a few moments, the attorneys will make their opening statements where they tell you what they think the evidence will show. The opening statements are not evidence. Next, the government will present their evidence. They will call witnesses to the stand and offer exhibits. The defendant does not have to ask questions or present evidence. He does not have to prove to you that he is not guilty of this charge. When all of the evidence has been presented, then the attorneys will make their closing arguments where they will summarize what they think the evidence has proved. Once again, those arguments are not evidence. Then it will be my turn to give you the final instructions on the case, and you will retire to your jury room to reach a verdict.
Welcome to the RMR Testimony Examination Warm-Up Material. Following is 1 minute of practice dictation at 260 words per minute. These are the same voices you will hear on the actual test. Ready? Begin. Would you please state your name for the record?
Sarah Miller.
Where are you presently employed, Mrs. Miller?
I work for Microsoft.
How long have you been employed with Microsoft?
About 4.5 years.
What is your job title at the present time?
I currently have the title of project manager.
Approximately how long have you had that title?
To the best of my memory, it's been 3 years.
What are your job duties as a project manager?
I manage the performance and progress of a group of engineers.
Would that be a group of software engineers?
That is correct.
Do you recall the exact date you began working on this particular project?
I believe it was May 10, 2004.
What was your job title prior to that time?
I was a software engineer.
When did you begin working as an engineer with Microsoft?
In January of 2003.
Where were you employed prior to that time?
I was doing some contract work with IBM.
Was that the only company you had a contract with?
I don't believe so.
What other companies did you have contracts with?
I had also done some work for Texas Instruments.
Are there any other contracts you can recall at the present time?
I believe that's all.
project, is that correct?
That's correct.
Are you the person in charge of this project, or do you share that responsibility?
I am the manager in charge.
How many people do you have working with you? This is the end of the practice dictation. At this time, the chief examiner will press pause to ensure that all candidates can clearly hear the dictation. We are now ready to begin the RMR testimony skills test, which is 5 minutes of dictation at 260 words per minute. Ready? Begin. Would you state your name for the record, please?
My name is Jennifer Strong.
And what is your residence address, ma'am?
I reside at 1140 Oak Tree Boulevard in Miami.
Ms. Strong, my name is William Jefferson, and I represent the plaintiff in this case. You were served with a notice to appear here today to testify. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Do you know why you were called to testify today?
Yes, I think so.
Please tell us your understanding of why you are here to testify.
Well, I was a witness to a motor vehicle accident several months ago.
Do you remember the date of the accident?
I can't remember exactly, but I think it was about 8 or 9 months ago. I know it was in the summer, maybe June or July.
If I can refresh your recollection, the date of the accident was June 30, 2009.
That seems right.
Let me direct your attention to that date. What were you doing when you witnessed this motor vehicle accident?
I was here visiting with my brother and his family for a couple weeks, and on that day, I was on my way to do some grocery shopping for them.
Do you remember what time of day it was that you left your brother's residence?
It was late morning. I believe it was sometime after the kids had left for school. I think it was about 11 o'clock.
Do you remember the intersection at which this motor vehicle accident occurred?
Yes, sir. It was at the corner of New York Avenue and 2nd Street.
Is there a traffic control device at that particular corner?
Yes, sir. There is a traffic light.
What road were you driving on?
I was going eastbound on New York Avenue.
Are you familiar with what the speed limit is in that area of the city?
It's 30 miles an hour for both New York Avenue and 2nd Street.
What is your recollection of what happened?
As I was approaching the intersection, I could see ahead that there were 2 vehicles stopped at the red light. I was approximately half a block away at that particular time. When the light turned green, the first car began to enter the intersection. That's when a truck came from the left, went through the light, and smashed into the car.
Can you give us a description of the vehicles that were involved in this accident?
The vehicle that was speeding was a red pickup truck, and the car that was hit was a yellow sedan. I don't recollect the make or model of either vehicle.
What was the point of impact between the respective vehicles?
The front end of the pickup truck that ran the red light on 2nd Street hit the driver's side door of the other car.
Do you have any impression at all as to the relative speed of the vehicles?
In my opinion, the car that started to enter the intersection on the green light accelerated to approximately 5 miles an hour. The light had just turned green. The red pickup truck appeared to be speeding to get through the light.
To the best of your recollection, what happened next?
Immediately after the impact, I pulled over to the side of the road and got out to see if anyone was injured.
Did either of the drivers emerge from their vehicles?
No, they didn't. I was worried that they were badly injured, so I called an ambulance immediately.
How long did it take for an ambulance to arrive on the scene of the accident?
I believe it was about 5 minutes. It was not very long at all.
Did any police officers arrive on the scene at that time?
Yes, sir. The police arrived at the same time as the ambulance.
To the best of your memory, were there any other witnesses to this accident?
There was a pedestrian who was waiting to cross New York Avenue at the time the accident happened. I don't know what his name was, but I saw one of the police officers talking to him.
Did you happen to hear any part of their conversation?
No, sir, I didn't. I was standing too far away at that time to hear whatever they were saying.
Did you ever communicate with the police officers at the scene of the accident?
Yes, sir. One officer came over to speak to me about what I had seen that morning. I basically just told him the same thing. The pickup truck coming from the left accelerated at a very high rate of speed, went through the red light, and hit the other car.
Did he ask you anything else?
Yes, sir. He asked me for my name and address, of course, and my telephone number. I explained that I was here visiting my brother.
Going back to the operators of the motor vehicles for just a moment, did you see them get out of their respective vehicles?
No, I didn't. The impact was pretty severe and both drivers were taken out of their cars by the EMTs. The police kept people away from the immediate area.
When did you first learn that a lawsuit was filed in connection with this case?
I am not sure when I was first contacted, but it was probably about 5 months after the accident.
Do you remember who contacted you?
No, sir, not in particular, but that's when I understood that the man who was hit had died.
To the best of your recollection, what was related to you?
I was told the man had suffered a broken leg in the accident and was recovering when he developed a blood clot in his lung and died unexpectedly as a result of the clot.
Is there anything else that you can recall from that conversation?
Well, I heard that there were criminal charges being brought against the other driver and that I would likely have to testify in that case as well as this lawsuit.
And did you testify in the criminal case in connection with this accident?
Yes, sir, I did. I was scheduled to testify at the trial, but for some reason it was postponed to another time.
But you did ultimately testify, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
To the best of your recollection, when was the trial?
As I recall, the trial finally took place about a month later.
Do you know what the outcome of the trial was?
Yes, sir. The defendant was found guilty but received a suspended sentence and was put on probation.
Do you know what the period of probation is?
No, sir, I don't. I want to say it was 3 years, but I don't remember.
As I explained before, I represent the plaintiff in this case, the family of the man who passed a result of the injuries he sustained in this accident, and they are seeking damages in connection with his death. Do you understand that?
Yes, sir, I do.
Do you further understand you were subpoenaed today as a fact witness in this particular case?
Yes, sir, I do.
And to the best of your recollection, have you ever spoken to any member of the family about any aspect of this case prior to appearing here today?
No, sir.
To the best of your recollection, have you ever spoken to the defendant about this case prior to appearing here today?
No, sir, I have not.
Finally, have you told us everything you remember about this accident to the best of your memory?
Yes, sir, I have.
I want to thank you for your time and attention. I think the gentleman to my right has a few questions for you. Please sit quietly until the chief examiner or other testing personnel instruct otherwise. Do not ask anyone, including test personnel, to assist you in closing, saving, or verifying a file. These are all integral parts of the examination. Anyone found asking for or receiving assistance from another candidate is subject to an automatic failure. If you did not complete the exam or you do not want your exam to be graded, please fill out and sign the affidavit of non-completion that is on the bottom right-hand corner of your test envelope. Do not sign this affidavit if you want your exam graded. After the transcription is completed, please erase all copies of the test from your computer, including text files, note files, and backup files. Please erase the memory in your steno machine. The chief examiner will check your equipment to ensure that all files have been deleted. Candidates who leave the testing site with an electronic copy of the exam will be reported to the Council of the Academy of Professional Reporters. Failure to follow these or any NCRA procedures may result in your automatic failure and being barred from taking NCRA-administered tests for a minimum of 3 testing cycles or permanently, depending on the nature of the violation. NCRA members may also be suspended or expelled from the association. Please place your paper steno notes, if any, in the envelope.